Hi, my name is Haley Jaggers, and this is my nonverbal experiment on breaking a nonverbal rule. Nonverbal communication is so important in the workplace that when the lines of communication become blurred and familiar patterns are broken, people can become confused and even frustrated with others around them. The nonverbal rule I chose to break was proxemics. According to Fred C. Lenenberg, whose article was published in the International Journal of Scholarly Academic Intellectual Diversity and also published by the National Forum Journals, he states, proxemics is the way people perceive and use space, including seating arrangements, physical space, and conversational distance, or personal space. He also defines the amount of space between people and how that affects how they should or might interact. The social zone, which would be 14 to 12 feet, he describes, is about the proximity in which I was repeatedly walking by and making quick eye contact with my boss. This was one of the rules I was breaking. Lenenberg tells us that in this amount of space, we are at least minimally acquainted with the other person and have a definite purpose for seeking to communicate, and that most behavior in the business world occurs within this zone. Our text on page 356 points out the significance of a simple doorway and the difference between an open door and a closed one. My boss chooses to leave his door open so that if we have any questions, we know he is available. I chose to break the rule of walking by his open door and specifically sending the nonverbal message that I wanted to communicate by making eye contact in his direction. But as soon as he looked up to meet my gaze, I chose to quickly look away and continue walking by his office. I repeated this trend throughout the day. To my boss, his office territory is his personal space, but he does not respect anyone else's personal space in the workplace because he owns everything, and therefore everything in every space is his own. That is why I chose to pick on him a little bit, if you will, to show him the significance of personal space. The type of territory I would consider my place of work being would be closest to interactional, which is a mobile area where individuals congregate informally, the boundaries of which are likely to move. I chose this territory because although I spend lots of time at my job, I do not have my own personal space or territory, and I would like to examine how my boss, who uses the whole office as his own personal space, would react to a nonverbal experiment. I broke the rule of proxemics by doing several things within my boss's territory that I normally would not do because I have developed an accepted pattern of communication. First, I walk up by his office, stopping at the doorway without saying a word. Then, I enforce a gaze of omission, which occurs when one person looks in the direction of the other's face, while the other does not reciprocate the gaze. In this instance, the person gazing possesses more power or influence than the non-gazer. Then, as he goes to make eye contact with me, as if to say, "What do you want?" or "You have my attention," I use gaze aversion, which is when one person intentionally avoids contact with the other. This would be denying his gaze and only adding more power to the breaking of my nonverbal rule because it adds confusion to the communication. Schwartz states in her article, Nonverbal Communication with Workplace Interactions, that an employee may conclude that a new coworker does not like him because that person doesn't make eye contact or keeps a physical distance. But the person could be shy or introverted and may have been interpreted incorrectly. Jones says it is important to remember that it takes two people to communicate, one to express and the other to perceive. This illustrates the importance of my eye contact and how allowing or not allowing, in this case, someone to make eye contact back can change the communication being given. Usually when walking by my boss's office and making eye contact, it tells him that I have a question or need to talk. So when I do not talk to him after following these nonverbal codes and patterns that we have established, he becomes confused as to what message I'm trying to send him. My boss expects a lot out of me in the workplace, which is normal, because I'm always running around busy and never really having too much time to talk. So, he would probably become curious as to why I am continuously walking past his office instead of working on something. I learned that Anne Litwin, author of Women and Men in the Workplace, Managing in the Age of Change, Essential Skills to Manage Today's Workforce, talks about Deborah Tannen's 1990 bestseller, You Don't Just Understand, Women and Men in Conversation. It explores the different conversational styles of women and men at length. Based on her research, Tannen concludes that boys and girls' early social lives are so different that they grow up in what are essentially different cultures. Thus, talk between men and women is in fact cross-cultural communication, with as many potential misunderstandings as communication between individuals from different countries. This could explain why there are differences in conversational expectations between a male and female in the workplace, not just between a boss and a coworker. My boss's reaction towards the whole experiment was pretty funny. I thought he might have gotten a little bit more upset, but I also didn't push him to his limits either, due to this being my professional place of work. His first reactions to this experiment were normal, trying to make eye contact back with me. When that didn't work, he began to use verbal communication by asking, "What do you want?" or "What are you doing, Haley?" Eventually, when I did not answer him, he became frustrated and verbally calling me into his office to figure out what I was doing instead of working. He eventually told me that he could find me more work to do if I was bored and just walking the halls. In conclusion, I found that proxemics is very important in what I do every day. It was a great nonverbal rule to break because it not only demonstrated to me how important it is to use these nonverbal communication skills wisely, but it also taught my boss a thing or two about territory and personal space. I also learned from my resources that eye contact is so important for nonverbal cues, as well as creating communication guidelines for conversations. My boss's reaction was typical to what I expected to see from him. He did not overreact to the point of wanting to fire me because I wasn't using proper communication skills, but instead, he just wanted to know what message I was trying to get across to him. The sources I used provided significant support to how nonverbal communication is so important in the workplace. I learned that my role in the workplace is to communicate effectively verbally, but also nonverbally, so that others around me are not getting the wrong or confusing messages. We should all think about the messages we send just by simply taking eye contact with one another. This is my resource page, and I hope that you've learned a little bit about nonverbal communication in the workplace, how proxemics is important in the workplace as far as our communication goes between each other. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I would look forward to hearing your responses. Thank you.